What's up everyone, John from Beyond ARTV. It's time for another episode of 7 on Sunday. Today I'm going to be doing a part 2 to a video that I did about 2 years ago. You guys have steadily been requesting it, and I figured, why not? Why not give the people what they want, so to speak? And I'm doing that in the form of 7 bands that I completely grew out of. Part number 2. If you want to check out part 1, there will be an annotation linked at the outro screen at the end of this video. I was 13 years old when I truly started to get into music, when I started developing my own taste, and I started out picking out bands that I liked and I wanted to hear more of, and I would ask my friend to burn certain songs for me onto CDs, and I started discovering similar bands from there, mostly from the radio and also from watching the channel Fuse on TV and seeing music videos. That helped me further explore, and that's how I found a lot of the bands that I'm going to be talking about on this list today. Not all of them by any means, and I don't want to say that I hate every band on this list whatsoever, even if I might hate some of their recent output. It's just one of those things where you might have felt a strong connection in your teenage years, or even in a certain time in your life, and now you no longer feel that. Well, the spark is gone, and the romance is no longer in the air with me and these 7 bands. So keep that in mind when you're watching the video today. Obviously, these are just bands that I am no longer in touch with. I would be curious to know, though, what are bands that you've fallen out of love with, or you just feel like you've grown out of? Sound off in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video today, and let's get started.
Come original, you got to come original. All entertainers, come original. You got to come original. You got to come original. All entertainer. Who I?
The first band on our list today is 311. A band named after a misdemeanor code for running naked through the streets. What could you ever grow out of there? I'm kidding, I'm not throwing shade at 311 here. In fact, I still think they're a pretty talented band. It's just for the specific genre that they do. Kind of this fusion of alternative rock, a little bit of reggae in there as well. A nice infusion of some, not tropical sounds, but almost like an islandy vibe. You know what I'm talking about. Some of the other bands in the scene like Ballyhoo, or those bands that often tour with them, maybe even Sugar Ray, I don't know. 311 are definitely stronger than Sugar Ray. I'm not comparing them to that, but in one point in my life, I truly was pretty into 311. I discovered them initially because of the game and the soundtrack to NASCAR Thunder 2004. From their album Evolver, they had the track Creatures for a while. And I actually still really do like that track. Maybe it's just because I had that early intimate connection with it. And then I ended up in 2005 picking up their album Don't Tread on Me after hearing a couple of the singles played on Fuse. At this point, as I go back to their music, I find it to kind of be thin, shallow, often following similar patterns and melodies, and I definitely don't find myself wanting to sit down to listen to an album like maybe I did in 2008, 10 years ago. You could do a lot worse than 311 when it comes to bands and music, so I don't mean to throw them under the bus here, I just don't feel that connection to them, really, personally.
Sun from my eyes, let it burn my back. Let it burn through my thighs, up to wide, wide open at the beach.
Before you even ask, this actually has nothing to do with the beef that Waves and I had. Nathan Williams obviously being the main face of Waves. It's not related to that. Obviously, that was a time when I decided to stop reviewing their music, but within the next 6 months or so, I started realizing that I had slowly been falling out of the graces of Waves' music. It's not that they don't have enjoyable tracks, because they absolutely do. I was just talking with my friend who you might know is fully involved, or maybe you formerly knew him as Spin It Reviews. I was talking with Mark, and I was just kind of chatting with him about the fact that we'd kind of both fallen off with Waves, and we saw a lot of those same situations that he threw himself into, and the way that it kind of felt all whiny and all over the place and also retreading at the same time. I can go back to something like King of the Beach that came out in 2010, and it's okay if maybe it's just background music, but as you progress through the discography, I just don't feel like there's enough variety or evolution. So as a result, I still have songs that I'll come back to for sure. I just don't really listen to full-length albums anymore.
Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your hate and the devil when I make.
Number 5 is the metal and hard rock band Disturbed. I was exposed to their music in 2006. I had a friend that I would hang out with after school. We would go to his place because it was close to my school, and he would play a lot of music for me of the heavier variety. In fact, he went on to be in his own heavy metal band. Pretty cool for you, Coleman. I remember thinking I was so rebellious for listening to this heavy music, and I saw the album art for 10,000 Fists, and it had the iconic little guy that Disturbed have on most of their album covers, and I was like, oh wow, this is like some demonic shit. Holy crap, and I go to Christian school, I'm such a bad boy. Turns out as the years went on, I didn't feel as strongly. I remember specifically on a beach trip in 2009, MTV2 was playing the music video for the song The Night by Disturbed. And even then, I was starting to question if I was really that into their music, and I was going through a bit of a pop renaissance in my life, and I started, I guess, cleansing out some of those radio rock bands that I didn't feel as strongly about. Now, that's not to say that Disturbed don't have some great songs. In fact, their Sound of Silence cover is striking. What a beautiful moment there. David Draymond, the lead singer of this band, sounds gorgeous on that track. But overall, I cannot get into this band for the most part. I thought Immortalized, the last album, was terrible. It had like the Vengeful One, which I thought was an okay comeback single, but it did get tedious over time. And they're one of those bands that with repeated listens, there's not a ton to really glean from that material. You know, you don't have a lot to come back to, and I feel like that's why I personally have drifted from them.
It's a beautiful life. It's a perfect denial. Such a beautiful life to believe in. So beautiful, beautiful life makes me.
Number 4 is 30 Seconds to Mars, aka the Jared Leto ego experience at this point. This is a band that I've watched fall from the heights big time. They were on the throne, and now they're somewhere in the depths of hell. 30 Seconds to Mars started out very promising with a great self-titled record that had a racing spirit with a lot of pounding drums and just a sense of urgency. And then they followed that up in 2005 with A Beautiful Lie, an album that I can't really replay all that often, like I recently admitted in my review of the latest 30 Seconds to Mars disaster, but it's still an album that has great songs on it. I still love The Kill, despite how melodramatic it is. I think that the more emo, post-hardcore sound, it actually kind of suited them. But after that, they started to kind of move on. This Is War was okay, but it definitely saw some more pop steps. But from there on out, it has truly been questionable at best. I think that Love, Lust, Faith, and Dreams had some really awful and tacky songs on it, but that was nothing to prepare us for what was to come after that, and that was the disaster that is America. Right down to its awful album artwork that you can see here, one of about 1 billion versions. This was a mess. This is something that saw a band in such a big identity crisis. They're collaborating with A$AP Rocky. They have programmed drums and synthesizers, barely any guitars. In fact, the guitarist isn't even currently touring with the band, so who knows if Tomo's even still in the band. I've just watched them fall from the heights of me loving them during my teenage days, loving their music videos on Fuse, to just being something that I steadily grew out of. There's plenty of bands from that era that I can look back on fondly. In fact, many of them are still my favorite bands to this day, but some of them have tried to stay relevant in such a desperate manner that it just makes you secondhand embarrassed for them.
Just you and me, and all other people with nothing to do, nothing to lose, and it's you and me, and all other people, and I don't know why I can't keep my eyes off of you.
White guy with the acoustic guitar syndrome right here, that's the band Lifehouse, playing it safe the majority of the time with their huge adult contemporary pop crossover Hot 100 singles. Everything from Hanging by a Moment to some of their more spirited stuff like, I don't know, what was that one track, Who We Are? Then there's You and Me. There's a lot of tracks that you just get the gist of it. If you've heard one, you've probably heard the majority of their stuff. They're really, they got so much passion and angst in them, and they're just trying to release it over these very formulaic, guitar-centric, acoustic-centered, I guess I should say, tracks that do take off in places, but for the most part, they fall flat. Now, I did recently allude to the fact that I'd be talking about Lifehouse in a video like this. Can we get a rewind, please? And I am by no means a Lifehouse fan. In fact, I really feel like I've moved on from their music. I mean, it was really popular when I was growing up in the 2000s, but it just feels so dated at this point. But we'll save more of that for another video. Don't say I didn't brace you for impact, because here Lifehouse comes on this very list. I think I was kind of drawn to this band because a lot of bands that I liked in the kind of like adult contemporary and like Christian rock crossover type thing, like Switchfoot I liked, and Berlin, and even Reliant K, they would promote Lifehouse sometimes, and I think that they occasionally toured together, so I was drawn to their music, and obviously they got a lot of play on like VH1 and stuff. I would wake up with it in the morning before school, so I heard plenty of their songs, and at the time, obviously, I was really into this band. If I'm talking about them on this list, I was at one point in my life drawn to their music, but now, just looking back, I feel like so many of the lyrics are cringy, very basic, like relationship type stuff, and even though they do have some great songs like Between the Raindrops with Natasha Bedingfield and even Hurricane off of their most recent effort, I think that the cheesy and the bad kind of outweighs the good for me.
Girls don't like boys, girls like cars and money. Boys will laugh at girls when they're not funny. And these girls like these boys, like these boys, like these girls.
I still can't believe I was this into my number 2 band on the list today. Oh, that's a nervous smile here. Good Charlotte, let's talk about them. This wasn't just a band that I was casually into, guys. I had the CDs, I had a t-shirt, I had really anything I could get my hands on, even though I wasn't really allowed to own that much stuff. I would sneak it around because I loved me some Good Charlotte. I loved the Chronicles of Life and Death. I loved all of their singles. I loved their music videos. I was all over them, and I wanted to have my hair. I think it was like the bassist name was Dean that had all like the crazy like over one eye type hair. I wanted that at one point, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. Look, Good Charlotte can absolutely be fun in the right scenario. You're going to like a throwback emo or pop punk night, you know I'm going to be singing along because I know every damn word to most of their damn songs. I'm not saying that they're never fun, it's just like Jeremy Johns would say, maybe it's a better time if I was drunk. This is kind of like Simple Plan for me. I mean, it falls short of the former glory. It felt so deep and poetic at the time, but looking back, it's just like razor thin, and you could slice through the lyrics immediately and be like, all right, I can dissect this. I see where you took this inspiration. You lifted this little emo thing from this band, or you got your influence for this guitar for that. And I just feel like so many of the tracks just felt generic as a result of that looking back on them. I think that their best album at this point, honestly, came out in 2010, and that was way after I was out of my scene phase, I suppose, and that album was called Cardiology. It was one that didn't really get promoted much, and it had some of their best songs of their career, and some of the ones that hold up the most. So if you're interested in getting into this band at all, I have to say, even though I'm not really into them that much at this point, check out that album.
Put your hats on, load it or get soft. You can see God when I take my mask off.
We're made from broken parts. We're broken from the start.
I'm almost ashamed to admit how many of the raps from Hollywood Undead that I could probably still do in my sleep without question, without fail. If you just told me to start, I could probably start, and that kind of irks me in a way. Hollywood Undead were the band of my senior year of high school. I was all over Swan songs. I'm talking MySpace blew up. Obviously, they blew up on that platform. I was super into MySpace, so obviously I was keeping up with all the hot bands, and Hollywood Undead were one of those that just definitely at this point, especially a lot of their early material, it feels very much of that time. And even their new stuff, I feel like, is kind of cringy. I think their best album was Notes from the Underground, and that's one that I can still kind of listen to, but some of the tracks, like Pigskin, I mean, I can't believe I used to like that. It's kind of painful, but I'm not afraid to admit that at one point in my life, I considered Swan Songs to be one of my favorite albums of all time. In fact, I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5 rating, I think in like 2011 when I reviewed it on this very channel, and that would definitely not be the case now. And I don't really miss those days. I can't say that I do. So many of the lyrics were very depressing, often violent, and not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. People can really express themselves however they want to. At this point in my life, as a 26-year-old man, I think it might be a little bit odd if I was still just fawning over Hollywood Undead and their amazing lyrics. I considered them at one point to be revolutionary. Now I just kind of see them as yesterday's news. Start getting loud, I want to party now. If you hit an undead, that's a party foul. I only drink Mickeys, I can't afford the cans. I drink so much they call me Charlie 40 hands. If getting oh, you caught me. Okay, so maybe deep down I still like some of their songs. I can't keep it internally oppressed forever, but fine. I see their flaws, I understand it, but I still accept it for what it is. But overall, for the most part, I really don't come back to this band anymore, and I can safely say that I've outgrown them. That's it for this episode of 7 on Sunday. I do hope you guys enjoyed seeing 7 bands that I've personally outgrown. Don't forget to drop a like on the video while you're here, and of course drop a comment letting me know what you think of my list, and obviously bands that you've outgrown as well. I'll try to reply to as many as I can. If you have suggestions for future episodes of SOS, feel free to drop a comment as well, and upvote some of the ones that you really want to see. Other than that, if you're able to, please support me on Patreon. It does help videos keep coming not only on this channel, but obviously my main channel ARTV as well. It's the top link down below. Or even more conveniently, there's an annotation placed over here in the corner of your screen, so you can tap that to go directly to Patreon. If you want to see last week's episode of SOS, tap here, or the first episode of this little mini-series here and other bands that I outgrew, it's right over here. All of my social media links can be found in the description, and other than that, I'll see you soon on Beyond ARTV.